2024, an amazing year for North American esports fans in League of Legends. There were maybe some great stuff, but there were some really good things. And I want to make sure that we highlight that because I think it's so easy for content creators and for fans to focus in on the negative things every year and to just be doom and gloom, especially whenever maybe they're unhappy with their personal lives, they can't find anybody, they're turning 36 next year and people keep calling them a boomer, even though 36 is not even like halfway through the average lifespan of a person. But because they work in gaming and esports, all the fans think that they are old. You know, like it's easy to focus in on those things. Let's focus in on some positive things. That's what my therapist says I should do. So I've got some honorable mentions before we get to the top 5 best things to happen to for LCS and now LTA North fans this year. And honorable mention number 1, by the way, this video doesn't have a sponsor, you can check the link below, is best of 3s. I know, Travis put best of 3s into a positive video instead of a negative video. I thought this guy fucking hated best of 3s. That's what Reddit told me. Yes, I did put best of 3s there. Look, I think best of 3s are a mixed bag, and I will continue to say that, but I do think they did some really cool things for the league this year. I think that they allowed us to highlight some of the teams that were doing really well. They built some really exciting stakes around teams going undefeated and how long they would remain undefeated, because it's easier to go undefeated whenever you are in a best of 3 because defeat is a match specific situation. And I think they also brought a lot of positivity to the league where people wanted something new and different, and they felt like best of 3s were. So I think best of 3s did a lot for the positive sentiment around the league, especially with its most hardcore fans. And so I will list that as an honorable mention. I will also put down the 2025 format changes because I know that that's like stuff for next year, but I do think there are changes that were announced this year, and the announcement and all that stuff is something people can get really excited about. Maybe we'll put them into the top 5 best things next year whenever we do this list again, because they will have actually happened and hopefully people will really like them. But for the time being, I have that as just an honorable mention because I think people wanted to hear some more format changes. They were kind of tired of the 2-split system, and this is something that people can get excited about. We also have, you know, the fearless stuff and all that. So it's just like a pretty good lift towards the end in terms of positivity. Another honorable mention, and I want to make sure that the people understand, I'm not talking about the staff and people who were impacted by this, but Immortals leaving the league. Again, super sad for everybody who lost their job. I'm not trying to like celebrate that by any means. However, I do feel like Immortals was a bit of an albatross around the neck of the league. They just were not really doing any brand building. The team didn't really do well. People had been trained and accustomed to the idea that you can tune out from Immortals games. I know, sometimes they would have like a good run and people would be like, oh, like their roster's actually pretty good. And then they'd still end up in dead last place at the end of the split. So I'm sad that it came to this, especially because even OG Immortals was really fun to watch. And I think there were some really cool people that worked at that org, but I do think that it is a good thing that like that brand is not associated with the LCS or LTA North now, and hopefully everybody who's over there lands on their feet finds something cool. So those are the honorable mentions for this year. Let's talk about the top 5 things that I thought were good for the LCS, now LTA North. If you missed the other video I did, which you probably didn't because that's the one that's going to get more views and engagement because it's negative, I did a video on the top 5 worst things, so you can go back and watch that if you want, but these are all positive. So starting off with number 5, I wrote influencer orgs. So in that last video, I talked a little bit about how I thought tier 2 dying was unfortunate, or the state of tier 2. One shining star gem thing in the whole tier 2 situation is that we had both OTK come in through Starforge, and my GOAT, Brandon Sanderson, came in with Dragonsteel. Now I will say it's more Brandon Sanderson's staff that are, I think, pushing for that. I don't think Brandon's sitting down and watching the games every week in his amazing airship theater in his underground lair. But I do think that it is really cool to see them come in. And then along the same lines as those 2 orgs, I think the promotion of DSG or Disguised to the LTA North main lineup for next year is pretty cool. A little funny the way they went around, like, this is a spot for promotion and relegation, and then they just granted it to DSG. But I do think having Toast in the league is going to be cool, and people are really excited about him. His team had already done a lot for viewership within LTA North, so I'm hopeful, within the Tier 2, so I'm hopeful they will do well in LTA North in terms of lifting the league. So I think that's a good thing. I think it's cool they're bringing influencer orgs in. I hope that there's more that enter Tier 2 next year. Number 4, I wrote, talk your split. And I know a bunch of people are gonna be like, oh, wasn't that cringe phrase that they used? Look, I'm not just talking about sort of the marketing phrase or like the tagline for Summer Split. I mean specifically that I think that Summer Split was the most fun and personality-driven league that we've had in a long time. Just in terms of not just the way that Riot, was creating content around the idea of trash talk and all that type of stuff, but also the way that I feel like they really opened up the channels for the players to do it themselves through things like the thing that they did on Sundays, I forget the name of that show, and also showing all chat and just all these little things that they did that allowed really great personalities, and huge credit to the players for this, to shine through sort of the marketing and theming and content that they did for Summer Split. I thought that was really good. Number 3, live patch. Look, I would not be surprised if more leagues start doing live patch stuff next year, because I think live patch was really exciting. I think it gave North America a bit of a competitive edge, just in terms of we were often doing cool things ahead of time. I know some people dispute that and say, oh, we just copy the other leagues or something like that eventually, but I thought it was really exciting. I thought it was something that gave the league a really unique feel to it. I think that it was brave to do, because for so long people had felt like you couldn't do something like this, and it was just taken for granted that we'd always be playing behind whatever was there. But I think honestly a lot of people do watch these leagues in part because they want to see what is being played at the highest levels, so that they can go take that into their Summer's Rift games and do it themselves. And I think having it be on live patch, you would often get to see within just a couple of days of a patch being released what people were interested in playing or what strategies they were trying. And it brought a freshness to the LCS and something very unique that nobody else was able to do around the world. LCK might be the best league in the world, but they weren't playing on the current patch. They were playing on the stale stuff. So I thought that was a really clever thing that they did, and I really liked it. So that's number 3. Number 2, hey, you guys remember last year we were not on the weekends? Isn't that crazy to think about? It's so funny after this whole year. It's easy to remember that like last year we were on these other days of the week. But yeah, we were not there. And we were, from what I understand, probably going to be on weekdays until very late in last year's decision-making and planning, hence the storage closet. So the fact that Riot did not say, oh yeah, we'll give it another year, or we'll, whatever, they were just like, nope, that was a mistake. We're going to go back to the weekends. We're going to figure out how to manage this with Valorant. It'll be confusing and frustrating, but we think that this will be better for viewership. And I think overall it was. You had a lot of people who, unfortunately, maybe some people were not able to make it back after dropping off in 2023, but I think a lot of people were like, hey, now I can watch again. And they got drawn in by things like Talk Your Split or the live patch or something like that. So I really feel like being back on the weekends made a huge impact. Was the second best thing to happen for the LCS this year. Number 1. So I debated whether or not I should put this on here because, I don't know, some people are gonna be like, oh, that's it or whatever. And it really does lead to a lot of other stuff. But I think Mark being commissioner of the league was the single best thing that happened this year. I guess obviously he got named it at the end of last year, but he wasn't really functioning and wasn't really doing stuff until this year. And I honestly think he did an amazing job. He did a lot of things where he would do these video addresses directly to the audience to talk to them about what was going on. We learned a lot of the reasoning and philosophy behind a lot of the changes that were there. I know Mark always gives a ton of credit to his team, and I know that Mark is not making decisions unilaterally or whatever, but I do think that a lot of the other things on this list, like live patch or being back on the weekends and that type of stuff, would be unlikely to have happened this year if Mark was not in that commissioner throne. So I really, really think that Mark was the single best thing to happen to the LCS this year. I know he's my friend. I did Hotline League with him for a long time, but also like that just means that I trust this guy, and I feel like, you know, he listened to me for 5 years of the show, took all the best ideas that I had, went to the league, and then implemented them over the course of this year. That is the single best thing that happened in the LCS this year. So look, I know there's some stuff about the future that is uncertain. There's some stuff about the future that is exciting, but I do feel like overall this year was a lot better than it could have been. And I think we were in a pretty dark path in 2022 and 2023 especially. And Mark and Live Patch and the weekend return and the decision to embrace personality in summer and, you know, decisions they made around bringing in personalities and all that stuff. These are all things that I think had really, really positive impacts for this year. And I think are why we're not sitting, you know, in an alternate universe where that stuff doesn't happen, where Mark doesn't come in, where we don't get all these things. I think that this video would be maybe much, much harder to make. And I think that the future of North American esports would be a lot more uncertain. So I thought that there were a lot of cool things that happened this year. What did you enjoy about this year? What did I forget? Please let me know in the comments below. This is probably the last video that you're gonna see on the channel for this year, and we'll probably take a bit of a break in the beginning of the year as we ramp up and get back into things, and there'll be media day and all that stuff. So it'll be, you know, it's obviously a little bit quiet right now, but I do wanna say one of the single best things that happened to me this year is one of the single best things that's been happening to me for the last 13 years of my life, which is having all of you watch my content. And I mean that sincerely and honestly. I really do appreciate all your support. I know that we are not in the glory days of the sport right now, at least in North America. And it makes me, I think, value each and every one of you even more because you tune into my live streams and you become a member of the channel, or you just say hi, you send me a supportive message on Twitter or on Discord, or you, whatever, all that stuff. It does mean a lot for me, and it is the type of stuff that keeps me motivated and going and wanting to keep creating content. So thank you all. I hope you have a holiday that is wonderful, and we'll see you all in 2025.